Hello, good afternoon, and welcome everyone to this exciting session on enhancing trust in science. I'm Angela Liberatore. I'm heading the scientific department of the European Research Council Executive Agency, and I'm very pleased and honored to moderate the debate with four excellent speakers who we shall see soon on our screen so that you don't see only me. Now, why do we care about trust and trust in science? Well, first of all, trust is part of the fabric of our society. We trust a lot of people without knowing. We trust engineers when we cross a bridge or take a lift. We trust our computer scientists when we connect to our platforms. We trust doctors, at least most of the time, when we need their help. So we trust a lot of people, the teachers of our kids. So trust matters in society. Of course, trust is not a matter of blind trust, and clearly science is one of the areas where we exercise critical thinking. So this session is not about calling for blind trust in science. It's about how why it matters to trust science and scientists and how this can better be achieved. This is what our fourth speaker will tell us. So clearly fake news and many events from uh, controversies on the pandemics, certain behaviors with regard to, I don't know, elections and so on and so forth have been cases, and of course climate change and the importance of its impacts while being denied by some are all areas that tell us the issue of trust in science and scientists is very important. Now we are here with four panelists. Two of them are grantees of the European Research Council. As you might know, the European Research Council supports frontier research in all domains of science, life sciences, physical sciences, engineering, social sciences, and humanities in a bottom-up way, meaning the scientists decide what they want to work on. And in doing that, ERC also engaged in a number of initiatives, most recently the Public Engagement with Research Award. The latest version was awarded on the 14th of July, La Fête de la République de la Révolution in France, and at ESOF. And we will hear about one of the projects from one of our panelists. Also new journalist schemes that was just launched, and be tuned on the 7th of December we will have a citizen science event. Actually, one of our panelists will also be a panelist there. We also funded a lot of research, which is research on the issue of trust in science or distrust in science and certain, let's say, perverse issues, including about conspiracy theories, vaccine hesitancy, information overload, and the impact of social media, including adverse impacts of certain booths in electoral behavior. And as I said, today we will hear some of the important issues that a couple of our grantees have been experiencing in their work. This session is also organized together with our colleagues of the Marie Sklodowska-Curie program, another very important pillar and the program in the European Union research landscape. Most of you know it. This is about training and mobility of young researchers, doctoral programs, fellowship schemes. And one of the actions of the Marie Sklodowska-Curie action is MSCA and citizens dedicated to bringing research and innovation closer to the public. And on Friday, that is tomorrow, we will have European Researchers' Night in 25 different countries in Europe and beyond. So for those of you who never attended a European Researchers' Night, time to find out the one closer to your home. Now, time for our speakers now. Without further ado, we have four of them. Jakob Schersen, professor at the Department of Physics and Management at Aarhus University. I don't see actually Jakob on my screen, so hopefully he's somewhere. And Tomomi Fusjuya, Associated Professor of Archaeology at Warsaw University. Welcome. And we have Aurélie Lacroix, senior scientist at Sixfold Bioscience, and Gianmaria Greco, senior research fellow at the University of Macerata. Since I don't see Jakob on the screen, and I don't see in the chat anything that tells me he's he's not there. So okay, so we shall start with the people who are here with us. May I start with maybe with Tomomi? Can you tell us something about how your work relates to the topic of this session in a couple of minutes? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Tomomi Fushia. I am associate professor at the Polish Center of Mediterranean Archaeology at the University of Warsaw. I specialize in collaborative archaeology. Collaborative archaeology creates a meeting point between archaeology and the public, and research on the past together with various communities and explore roles and the meaning of archaeology and contemporary society. It's a participatory practice-based research, and I mainly work in Sudan and Cyprus. So that a good part of my work is science communication focused on archaeology. And important part of my research is to communicate and gain trust of local communities towards archaeology. And when, for example, I started working in Sudan, in some villages, I faced with some doubts and rumors and mistrust relating to archaeology. And this is not to say that Sudanese community don't care or they question about archaeology itself as a scientific discipline. In fact, there's a lot of interest and respect towards it. But I found through my research that the underlying issue is how it has been operated and communicated since the time of colonialism. So this understanding of where the issue comes from helped me a lot to set the approach. And I found dialogue. And having dialogue and the collaboration are crucial. Communication should be two ways, not broadcasting scientific knowledge and conveying what archaeologists think important and interesting. Rather, it's important to listen to them and integrate their knowledge into the message and work together. So that having dialogue also helped me to come out of my academic bubble and led me to self-reflect about archaeology. So as a result, now some of our closest collaborators in the communities in Old Dongara in Sudan, where the ERC-funded UMMA project is implemented, led by the Professor Artur Obruski, and this is the project that we received the Public Engagement Award in its research. The collaborators, those are including the who are once suspicious and had some doubts to archaeological work. So now we are exploring together to reveal the history and promote the importance of their heritage and archaeology together. So this is what I do, and then I hope I can also contribute to today's discussion from my experience, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Excellent, Umami, thank you. And actually, you won the prize by the public. So for a public engagement award, this is maybe even the most prestigious of them. I remember I was in Leiden when this was awarded. Congratulations on that. Okay, let's go to Aurélie then. Aurélie, can you tell us a bit of your work and how it relates to the topic of our session?
Yes, sure. So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm currently a senior scientist at Sixfold Bioscience. We are a small startup based in the UK. And so my research work aimed at using RNA to develop therapies to specifically target disease cells without touching healthy cells. So I've been mainly interested in cancer research over the past 10 years and kind of in between chemistry and biology. I joined my company by being a Marie Sklodowska-Curie Fellow, and I'm now a full-time employee there. So I started being interested in science outreach and communication to the general public during my PhD. I was part of many different initiatives, kept doing it during my fellowship. So I was part of Pint of Science in Canada, for example. And I also completed a science journalism degree and communication in parallel of my PhD. So it's been really something that has been part of my scientific journey since almost the beginning. I'm very much looking forward for today's discussion.
Thank you, Aurélie. Very sharp and synthetic, and congratulations also on your work. You also mentioned an element of the link between research and innovation, and one of this morning session was dedicated, in fact, to that particular topic with Professor Leptin, the president of the Scientific Council of the European Research Council, speaking with Mark Ferguson of the European Innovation Council about the relation between those stream of work to which you're adding the public engagement one. So, things get connected in a virtuous way. Not always, but sometimes they do. Okay, let's go to the gentleman on my screen. This is Gian Maria Greco. So, Gian Maria, please tell us how your work is connecting to this topic.
Good morning. I'm a senior research fellow at the University of Macerata, and my research focuses on accessibility studies, specifically accessible communication and media. In a way, the why and how. I'm interested in accessible communication, how to make communication accessible for a very diverse public. Diversity in terms of culture, language, ability, disability, and so forth. In a way, if you want, my interest in making communication accessible and able to reach the public is more about form than content, than what is being communicated. But at the same time, I'm also a board member of the Marie Curie Alumni Association. Been working within the association for in quite a few years, especially within the context of communication, the communication working group. And within that the working group, I've been always interested, and this is something that's peculiar, this very specific, a typical trait of the Marie Curie Alumni Association, and interest in how we can support the alumni in communicating their research.
Thank you, Gian Maria. Oh, Jakob, you were expected eagerly. So now we shall hear from Jakob in a couple of minutes how he turned from quantum physics to deep citizen science and how this relates to the topic of our session in 2 minutes. Jakob, the floor is yours and welcome.
Thank you very much. So I am, as you said, and originally a quantum physicist. And then when I got my ERC almost a decade ago, I had a small corner of my application where I said, maybe just for fun, we could try to take some of the complex challenges and turn them into games and see if the general public could participate and maybe potentially solve these. And this evolved into a project that I'm now hosting, which is called Science at Home, where in the beginning we took natural science challenges from quantum physics, from computer science, millennium math challenges, and turned them into games that were in a form that general public could participate in. And we got a couple of 100,000 people to participate in this, and I think it was a great success. And then we started thinking about, if we have this many people, we could maybe also solve social science questions about how it is that people socially interact and think. And that turns into another set of games. One of the games that we developed was in an initiative to try to do cognitive profiling in the same way that Google and Amazon and Facebook do, but in a democratic way in which everything that we learn about this can then be given to the entire world as sort of knowledge about what it means to be human. And then we take these insights from, you can say, complex problem solving and social science insights and try to evolve it into something that we call hybrid intelligence, where we try to develop workflows that are meaningful and that are upskilling to the individuals. And then the last thing that I will talk about when we come back is then we have then evolved into a series of what we call games for good, where we try to explore the use of games and AI in order to generate new forms of public engagement and public democracy.
Thank you, Jakob. Yes, definitely we need game for good because there are more than enough game for bad, in current affairs. We shall comment no more. So it's very nice to be in such a nice company. And I think you know the other speakers anyhow, so even if you missed the first round of introduction, we will now go into some questions that we have for you, there are 3 questions that I would like to address to you all, and you can decide whether to be super fast for and address all of them, or to focus on one of the 3. The choice is yours. So a first question is, what do you think are the benefits and the challenges of bringing research closer to the citizens? What does it actually mean? Research, of course, is part of society. It's not a matter that research is there and society is there. Research is part of it, but sometimes it doesn't connect very well with citizenship and other, let's say, non-researchers in our societies. So what motivates also you to be part of the work on public engagement activity? And I'm actually addressing people, meaning ERC grantees and Marie Sklodowska-Curie Action grantees, who are not required to do citizen science, to demonstrate ex ante in your application that you're going to save the world and climate change and all the rest. It's just that we trust you, in fact, to do good science, and hopefully by doing good science also get good impacts for our societies, economies, and the environment, and also engage with the citizens the way that you consider useful. So what motivates you if nobody's telling you you should really do it because it's good, let's say, science citizenship? And what do you think we could do to improve science engagement and science communication? Are there any easy and practical things that you could recommend to do that? Or maybe easy or not that easy practical things, but still that you could offer as areas where we could engage, all of us? And last but not least, according to some survey, the trust in science, in spite of so big controversies, did increase during the pandemic. I do not use actually the post-pandemic word as a sentence, because I don't think we are exactly post-pandemic. We are maybe in, let's say, post-acute pandemic for COVID, and you never know about the next one. Not to be Cassandra, but just epidemiological understanding of things. But the question is, even if globally there is probably more trust in science, there have been big controversy. So the question is, why many people are still distrusting scientists and maybe listen to the last, so to say, self-appointed expert on anything from epidemiology to climatology to artificial intelligence and the like? How do we respect the fact that citizens want to be better informed and want to have a say and are intelligent beings, while of course acknowledging that spending years doing research and so on and so forth should somehow make a difference in the way evidence is shared and constructed, and of course also challenged by the peers and so on. So this is the set of questions, and I let you decide which one you want to answer and how. Since you were the last, Jakob, I'll start with you. So, okay. What is your take on any of the question?
Yeah. So, in terms of the first one, so what the benefits are, there are of course a growing number of examples of benefits of citizen science and public engagement in research where concrete problems have been solved, and I think that's really important. But I don't think that we should think of all of science being taken over by citizen science. More importantly, I think that it is important for us that citizen science has a set of core values that are important for the future directions of society. And so this means that openness, transparency, inclusivity, and the sense of human values is something that is really important in citizen science and public participation in research. And by having these kinds of research projects, we can also stimulate those values in society at large. And I think that, for instance, in my field, we try to use AI in a variety of different societal settings. And I think that one of the big challenges that we have in terms of AI is that we don't really know how to create truly human-centered AI solutions. And one of the reasons that we don't know that is that it takes a lot of effort to create something which is not just an off-the-shelf implementation of AI, but something that really deeply involves in human processes. And I think citizen science is unique there because, as I said, citizen science has this unique sense of value of every participant, which means that if we are trying to solve a challenge using citizen science, then we are both trying to solve it, but we are also trying to create meaning for the participants, which is not always the case in companies where we're trying to just create efficiency. So by doing more human-centered AI exploration with citizen science, I think that we can develop models that can be the guideline on how to develop human-centered AI also in the society. So not just the solution, but the path to the solution and the values underlying the solution is something really important. Another short answer to the last two questions is, in my mind, ways in which we can build new bridges of engagement for the citizens to engage in projects. But it goes both ways. Also, that we as researchers need to engage more in societal issues, not just worrying about which publications we can get, but really that's what we do in our Games for Good unit, is we take projects up where we can first and foremost try to create impact, and then maybe we can also publish it. But when we do that, then we have one example that we have is a Corona Minister game that we built, in which we generated a game in which participants could step in the shoes of the Corona Minister and do containment policies, and not just sort of get a curve of the red and the green curve for policy and for how many casualties you have of COVID, but also economics and privacy invasion. And this gives the participants, the citizens, a sense of all of the complex considerations that are really there, both in science and in policy. We believe it can create better agreement between the general public and the science and the data-driven authorities. But also, this can be a source that there are a lot of science, value-driven questions in society, and we don't have ways of really building bridges. And we believe using games like this, we can actually generate, crowdsource opinions, value-based opinions on a large number of societal issues. And I think this is where we can only solve that challenge as researchers by developing state-of-the-art uses of AI and games and engagement mechanisms, and then coupling it in with the society at large.
Thank you, Jakob. Of course, if there is time for another round, I will challenge you or ask you, how do you tackle biases in artificial intelligence, since there are many of those. I see you're nodding. Of course, you're fully aware. But let's now give the floor to Momi, and your experience in participation in archaeology. And also speaking about values, you were referring, for example, to certain distrust because of the colonial heritage of that discipline in some context. So what is your take on the question that are on the table?
Okay, I think I will start also from the first questions, but like you mentioned, I mainly work in Sudan or Egypt, where I'm not outside. It's not my, I'm not from these cultures, so that I'm working on somebody else, the heritage and the history and the culture, and then the way the archaeology started in these countries is really closely related to colonialism. So that what we are being challenged as archaeologists now is that it seems we have been continuing the sort of colonial exploitation by not communicating well with the local communities who live close to where we usually work. So that I think rather than benefit, I think it's more like a social responsibility for archaeologists or maybe other researchers working in the field, especially, is to connect with local communities. And then like just Jakob just mentioned about transparency and inclusivity, but this is the most important part, I think, to overcome and actually change the way the field archaeology become more decolonized, and then work together with local communities. And also, I want to mention a little bit about in the second question about how we can improve. archaeology is one of the, I think, the field that has been doing science communication for a long time through museums and site visits or guidebooks, tourism. But this way of outreach that is giving information to the visitors or the public in general seems not working, but rather I realized that it's important that we actually engage with them and have a dialogue and have a communication with them, and then ask them what's the knowledge they already have about the past. And then sometimes, especially, like I said, I work in other countries, not my culture, so that there are a lot of cultural knowledge exists that has been accumulated over the generations, so that sometimes they know better than us about certain things, material cultures, how things are used, how things are made, so that these knowledge, not just scientific knowledge, but their knowledge also should be integrated into the message of a communication, so that it's not just about science communication, but also it's more like the knowledge that exists in the society. And then by doing this collaboration, I think we can improve better to better communicate about the science.
Thank you, Tomomi. Excellent and very frank experience and reflection that you're making. Let's move to Aurélie. Aurélie, what is your take on the question? I don't know whether you will tell us also something about how science and innovation are connecting in terms of public engagement, but the floor is yours, Aurélie.
Thank you. So I'm trying to understand all this, answer those questions quite quickly, because I guess there is a lot we could discuss. But if I start on a very personal level, when I think I started science outreach a bit like by hazard, right? Just like participating to this humanity thesis competition and see how it goes. And I think as a scientist, it really helped me gaining that feeling of feeling more useful, right? And gaining more support from the community, which is super important, helped enhancing creativity skills and communication skills. So I guess just for scientists themselves, I think there is a lot to win from this. Going back a bit further on how I experienced this on my work. So I'm working in the health sector, right? And so our job is to try to make drugs. And so in my field, we have a lot of discussion with patient association. And I think this is something where it's really important to have the right communication skills, because you're talking to people who have a disease or family who support those people. And there is, I guess, a lot of emotions there, when scientists tend to be very data driven. And I think bringing those community closer really helps making the science better, because you can design your experiment better, right? And also help those people understanding what are the progress of science and how do we deal with the issue that they're facing. So I guess overall, it just, as you said at the very beginning, help closing that gap between science and society and re-putting science where it should belong, which is helping the public making more informed decision. I found that some challenges that I've observed while doing a lot of this outreach was that it's really hard still to reach the public, right? So there is a lot of science communication events, but they are usually full of scientists. So there is a strong bias towards who attend those events. So I guess by diversifying the number of events and the type of communication we do, we will eventually reach more people. And I guess I'll join the point of making science more inclusive, and so that we can reach more people across those groups. So I guess this leads me to kind of the second part: how do we improve the science communication to restore trust in science? I think I fully agree that we need to not just tell fact, but create that healthy dialogue and debate, right, with a real intention to be trusted and to create that trust, not only convey an information to the audience. And I think that's a point that we're still missing very often. So keep the effort to increase representation of all public. Go and talk to people that are maybe less aware of science, or find the leader of the different communities to sort of help educating that public. So could be like welcoming, you know, like students from like communities where science is less like taught or something, and just use those people to be the vector of information, right? So yeah, I guess like make science more inclusive in general, and using that space as much as possible and diversifying our tools. And yeah, I think like that should help improving like science literacy and educate people on the scientific method in general. Explain that we don't know everything, that the way we are building science is a very iterative process where we make hypotheses, we test them, those get confirmed by other scientists, etc., etc. So really being honest on how we create science, how we got a result, how much do we trust it, and make people question our own results so that in the future they would question the information they receive as well. So I think I'll stop there, and we can keep discussing, I think, if we have time for a second run.
Thank you, Aurélie. Actually, I think you were saying very explicitly, but it was coming up also from Tomomi and Jakob, that building those bridges and working on public engagement with science, it's also good for the quality of science, because you get certain feedbacks, you get certain kind of other perspectives. So that's, of course, a very interesting perspective. As you all said, it's a two-way street. It's not just in one dimension. So without further ado, we go to our fourth panelist. So Gian Maria, what is your take on the questions?
Well, I'll start from what Aurélie just said. I'll try to focus more on the second question, the one about trust in science, how we can improve it through science communication and maybe some action that we can do. And we discussed it within the MSCA in the past days to reach, to identify some ideas to share today. So, and speaking of trust in science, I have a personal feeling that sometimes when we talk about trust in science, we in general, the way we talk about trust in science, in a way, it's similar to, it's more similar to talking about faith in science. But faith and trust are two very different things. And the way we may expect people to trust science, it's more similar to asking people to have faith in science, but the two things are very, very different because one may have faith based on very different reasons or no reason at all. That's the beauty and the power of faith. But trust requires a bridge, requires a ground, and requires some shared tools. It's a two-way process. If we demand trust, we also need to give trust to the citizens. This also means that for a long time and many projects and there have been many efforts, and there are still there are many efforts on how to improve science communication, how to promote public outreach. Public outreach indeed is sometimes a requirement in many funding programs. And this is important. At the same time, it's important to and need to be promoted. At the same time, it's important all the effort to provide researchers with tools for better science communication. I'm thinking about a project we have been doing with the MSCA called EduBirds. They provided training material to researchers, and one area is science communication, free training material. Or two other projects, we are part of the consortium. One is on citizen science, the other on open access and open society, open science. They are all great efforts, and we do believe in that. But at the same time, as Aurélie said, if we ask this trust from the other side, then we need to provide people also with the tool to understand what we are saying. So in a way, if you part of the second question was also to think about actions, right? Some action we could do. Well, there is a kind of science communication dream, a kind of a coordinated campaign on what the scientific method is, how it works, and what evidence is, and how we read it, how we use it, because that's the way to provide tools to people to understand what we are saying. It's not just science communication is not just about providing the information, making sure the information reaches, but making sure also that people then can process it, elaborate it, transform into knowledge, understand it, and then provide us with feedback that can make our research better, that can improve our research and the way we work with and for society.
Thank you, Gianmaria. Actually, we didn't coordinate our intervention, but it's very interesting because I started by saying that we are speaking about trust, but not about blind trust. And you were making a very useful, I think, and clear distinction between trust and faith. Faith doesn't require a demonstration. Well, even if some theologists, of course, have been very busy in trying to find demonstration. But faith is faith, while trust is something that, yes, is also a feeling and it's a process, but it's something that needs to be demonstrated. I can trust you all to be here for this session, and you don't come along and you have no justification. Next time I will not trust you so much. But this is what I guess the process is between researchers and the citizens who, as a profession, do other things in life. Why should they trust the researchers versus somebody else who might speak about certain topics without, let's say, the competence that comes from studying them in certain ways? Good. We are good in time, but we really need now to be extremely synthetic. So you have basically 1 minute each or so for a takeaway message from this session. And we will then close straight on at 45. Who would like to start? Jakob, shall we start with you again?
Yeah. So I think that we should realize that the science is used to build the future, and the way that we talk about science builds the values of the future. And I think that we should distinguish between faith and trust in science and faith and trust in the scientists, because science may be objective, but scientists don't necessarily have to be objective. They should engage in society and also engage science in society. And I think that is the way in which we move this distrust in science as something objective, something that doesn't necessarily create good for us, into something that people can trust, can engage with, and can support by seeing that both scientists and science have a human face and have a positive impact on the future.
Thank you, Jakob. And I must say, each time I listen to Jakob, I think the beauty of interdisciplinarity, how a quantum scientist as a background can be so accurate and conscious of latest developments in social sciences work. So thanks for that, Jakob. Tamomi, your takeaway from this session or on the topic in general?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So I have maybe two quickly. I think it's important in both sides that first the science community we try to come out from the bubble, and we try to engage with them, and then also with the people, and then also self-evaluate what we have been doing in terms of engaging with them and understanding them. I think without knowing the gap between the scientific community and the citizen, it's difficult to earn the trust, or we try to work on it. And then the collaboration is really help. And then not only like you said, trust is a mutual thing. So that working together really empower both sides and help to learn from each other and discuss and exchange ideas. I think this is really the way to improve the science communication. Yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you. Excellent. Aurélie, your turn for a takeaway from this session, or again, the topic in general.
Yeah, so I really agree with the self-evaluation for myself, right? Understand what has worked, what didn't work. I think overall not feeling discouraged and keeping up the effort of the community to try to engaging with citizens, and I guess engaging with more and more citizens, right? Not only scientists, but try to speak up to as many people as we could, and probably try to tweak our communication so that we don't just have the intention to explain science, but also to keep building that needed trust on science, on scientists, and on the work we do. So yeah, give more intention for this, like in the communication we do, I guess.
Thank you, Aurélie. And of course, you were speaking earlier about your work with the, for example, Patients Association. And I recall, for example, the Cochrane Network, I think that's the name. It's something where patients were really engaging, or have been, not where, engaging with scientists about, well, we have the knowledge of certain symptoms and of certain consequences, both physical and mental, so you surely want to hear that. And it's through this collaboration that the bridge and the trust can be created, and also that the science can also be improved because it takes into account of more views. So yes, evaluating how this works continuously is surely a very good message from this session. I'm sure Gian Maria will have other takeaway messages for all of us. Please, Gian Maria.
Well, a very simple takeaway message that in a way, I think it joins together, that brings together what the other three speakers said. And it's that thinking about anti-scientific behavior and disinformation, but that one that is born out of good intention, not the one that comes from ill intentions, okay? From good faith and good intention, good attitudes. Well, we need to really sit down and try to build this bridge and dialogue with people, understanding that, and try to listen more to citizens and to the audience, the public, and remember that, and let them understand. And also we should remember that we are part of that citizen within citizen science and public outreach. We are part of all that. We are human beings as well.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. I think this is also where you link with Jakob about science and the scientists. Yes, indeed, scientists are human beings. Well, we might have with artificial intelligence or robotics, there are some robots who might replace anyone, surgeon, journalists, judges, well, in certain tasks. And as we know, we have attempts also to replace scientists by writing papers based on certain, things. But yes, most likely we will remain with human beings working with other human beings, even in the most futuristic application of artificial intelligence. So those elements are quite important. I don't know whether any of you would like to throw another gem of wisdom in the conversation. We have 30 seconds, I guess. Otherwise, I will close from my side. No? Okay, then, well, one of my takeaway messages is that nowadays, between fake news and hate speech, science is one of the areas where people can still talk, and talk based on some arguments, and arguments that might be critical of each other, not agreeing, not understanding, and then the point is, okay, let's try to understand, let's try to argue more. So for me, this is one of the great values of science, and one of the great value of public engagement with science and by scientists. So I thank you all for being part of this very nice and important conversation, one that of course doesn't finish now at 45. It will continue with a number of follow-up activities and with the experience that we all take in our work. So thanks for being so generous and so kind and wise in your contribution, and wish you all the best with the continuation.